Good afternoon. Welcome to the 216th episode of the Georgia Farm Bureau Georgia Prep Sports Drive for the GHSA State Title. Today I'm going to go over some of the region standings in the spring sports. We've been talking about it a little bit, and I think they've gotten even more interesting just after this past weekend. Go over some of the headlines from track as well, tennis, spring sports, all that. But let's get started. I actually want to begin the show. I didn't get to catch the whole thing, but I saw Charles Barkley was on 60 Minutes last night, and one of the things that stuck out to it was just the stories he was saying about playing high school athletics. One in particular, he was talking about how long does a pair of shoes last, and for him, he said they lasted the whole season, and his mom made sure of it. He had a pair of shoes he liked wearing during the game. His mom would come after the game when he was hanging out with his friends, though, and say, "Charles, I need those shoes back. Don't ruin them." And they would switch them out, and he didn't really understand it, but it put into perspective later on in life that that's just the situation he was in. And when you think back to your high school career and stories like that, just how far, obviously, Charles was able to go in the sport of basketball, you really do remember your athletic accomplishments above everything else. Everyone talks about the importance of academics, which is true, but really learning is a process that you never stop. After school, you still learn new things. You can keep doing that. I don't remember any great achievement where, oh man, I really aced that test. In fact, the only test I ever remember are the ones I absolutely bombed. I remember I got a 32 on a true-false test once on the book A Brave New World to start the semester. A teacher came out and said, and they used to do this too, it'd say, people would ask, what was the highest score? What was the lowest score? And sure enough, my teacher said, oh, well, the highest was a 98 and the lowest was a 32. And they handed out the results, and I had the 32 sitting on my desk. I did not like summer reading at all. Then another one I remember was in our Georgia history class. We had an organization project where every single page had to have a certain thing glued onto it. It all had to be in order, and anything that was out of order, you got docked points. And my teacher handed it back, and I got a negative 30 on it. And I said, wait a minute, shouldn't I have just not turned it in? How do you get a negative grade? And then she informed me that my classmate had a negative 70, and so it wasn't going to change. The point is, academics is important, but as I just clearly showed, you remember your athletic accomplishments, you remember your equipment, your shoes, how your parents helped you, and even later on, putting all of Charles' career success into perspective, he has really cherished those memories. I think that is what it is all about. He still owns a property where he grew up. He still hangs out with all his high school buddies. They still talk about their high school games. That is why we have to support high school sports. That's why it's so important, and that's why all the support around it ends up going a long way. And so I just thought that was a great story that Charles was saying. He is an outstanding guy. And actually, when I was in middle school at Dickerson, it was career day, and Charles was recently retired. This would have been in this is probably 2000. And my dad brought Charles Barkley to Dickerson Middle School for career day, and everyone was freaking out. He was completely mobbed, and I mean, his message was pretty funny. It was basically just staring at a bunch of middle schoolers and saying, don't do drugs, don't be a dummy. But I know that was something that the classmates never forgot, and it was really fun. And that's what it's all about. Going back, uh, talking to kids about just how much these years are going to mean to them. And it's just certainly the case. But let's get into it on the lacrosse side of things. There were big upsets last week on the boys' side. We talked about the historic win West Forsyth had over Lambert. But then on the girls, Najee has been highlighting what's going on in Area 5 in Class 5A through 6A with Johns Creek and all those teams. And there is a really interesting scenario playing out in the weeks ahead. So as it stands right now, BT is at the top. Cambridge and Roswell are tied for number 2. No team has gone without a loss. Blessed Trinity is the team that did lose to Johns Creek. But then you have Centennial at 2-1, and then Johns Creek at 2-2. Johns Creek only has to play Centennial, so they can beat Centennial and probably get that number 4 seed. Centennial, however, still has to play Johns Creek, Cambridge, and Roswell. So if Centennial loses to Johns Creek, they're going to be 2-2, but then they could beat Roswell and Cambridge and still hold the edge on Johns Creek. It is going to come down to these final games. That region is incredible. Let's look at who BT closes out with real quick. So BT, they are 11-2, and they just beat Roswell last Thursday. They still have to play Creekview. Creekview's been absolutely cruising, but that's a non-region game, and then they'll play Centennial in the final game. So basically all BT has to do is beat Centennial, and they'll be in there because the only team that holds the tiebreaker on them is Johns Creek, and they already have 2 region losses. BT only has 1. As for Creekview, they're in Area 4. It's a different one. They're the defending state champs. They're 10-0 this season, 4-0 in the region. They've had some huge wins already, 15-5 over Roswell, 13-4 over Johns Creek. And they're getting ready to play BT on Thursday. I think that'll be a good measuring stick for both programs. BT, they're the defending champs as well. So big games in girls lacrosse. I just think that storyline of Johns Creek is going to be key. They need to get into the playoffs, and they have to win against Centennial. All right, so let's look at some of these boys' stories. So on the boys' side, Blessed Trinity, West Forsyth, those are the teams that are really picking up full steam late down in the stretch of the season. West Forsyth is having their best ever run for sure. That win over Lambert was kind of the bookmark of that. But BT is absolutely rolling. They're number 1 in Class 5A through 6A. They're looking for their second title in 3 seasons. And they head into the matchup this Tuesday against Westminster, who is number 1 in Class 1A through 5A. Right now, BT is number 2 in the country. Number 9, according to the U.S. Lacrosse Magazine's Southern State Top 10. And they are also 3-0 in the area. Sophomore Michael Reed has 25 goals, 20 assists. Their head coach, Bobby Parker, is talking about all their depth. But it will be a big rivalry game, and Westminster has been able to show a contrast of style. They are a very tactical team. They can slow down the pace if they want to. They know how to match up against their opponents in that sense. So let's look at what they've done this season. So Westminster, they are 6-4. They have a 2-game win streak heading into that matchup. They're 1-0 in the area. And they're coming off a 10-9 win over Alatoona. That's a team that's made deep runs. But they fell pretty significantly, 24-6 to Roswell last week. So we know how good Roswell is. They only have the one loss. So let's see. Roswell steamrolled Westminster. Can they play a more competitive game against Blessed Trinity, or will BT also steamroll them heading into that big showdown with Roswell? That's the big question mark right there. Blessed Trinity, they've also beaten Lambert 9-8, a 1-goal victory, same sort of thing that West Forsyth had. So you have a situation now, who is the best team in the state of Georgia? BT's undefeated, West Forsyth's undefeated. They both have been able to top Lambert, the gold standard, but BT also has a big win over Lovett recently, another defending state champ. And you look at what they're doing offensively, West Forsyth has scored double-digit goals in every single game this season. BT has done it every game but 2. And they've scored 180 games in 13 outings. So they have an explosive offense for sure. They put up 9 on Lambert. West Forsyth put up 10. Obviously, those teams are not going to play each other this season, but both have an opportunity to emerge as, honestly, the #1 team in the nation at this point. So let's look at golf real quick. This is the latest headline. Rivers Academy, and that is a team I've not heard of. That is a private school in Alpharetta, Georgia. And I wonder if they're GHSA. Okay. One sec. I want to figure out who this Rivers Academy is. So, led by medalist Chapman Barnett, Rivers Academy won the 6th annual Larry Nelson Invitational at Pine Tree Country Club, matching the tournament record. Barnett was 5 under with a 67, and their team mascots, the Raptors, they were -6 as a team. He was -5. The rest of the team was just -1. Milton came in 2nd place. Gainesville finished 3rd. And that is the Georgia Scholastic Golf Association. I did not know that they were in the GHSA. Let me figure this out real quick. Yep, so they are a GHSA school. So they're playing a GHSA schedule. They're dominating. It looks like they're poised to do it again, but that's odd. Normally these blogs in the AJC focus on the GHSA programs, but it is what it is. I did not know that they were in Alpharetta. So let's go to tennis real quick. The most dominant program in the state is the Walton girls. They've won 22 all-time state titles. Truly dominant. What year was it that they didn't win? And what's so amazing about it, I mean, I've covered some of the state championships that believe they're held in Rome. The Walton girls, they're winning these state titles without dropping a set. They're just absolutely dominating. These are program-grown players, too. And it is just so difficult to be that gold standard for that many years. Everyone knows that you are the team to beat, and still, no matter how you shape it up, who you put at your one, who you put at your one doubles, your two doubles, they still keep finding a way. And they've been phenomenal once again this season. So heading into 2023, Walton has won 2 straight. Lambert edged them in 2019. That was the first time Walton did not win since 2012. They've won every single title but 3 since 2001. So the Walton girls return another loaded lineup this spring and appear to be heading towards a 23 all-time state championship. They're 10-0 right now. They've only lost 2 lines all season. Obviously, they're 10-0, so they've won in the end, but only so maybe they lost doubles in one matchup or singles in another, but the depth is overwhelming. They've also beaten 2 other defending champs this season, Northview and Pace Academy. Their regular season continues. They will face Marist right before the playoffs, and head coach Anthony Foddy, this is quite a statement. He said, "This is by far the most talented team I've ever had. They are all a year older than last year, a year better, and a year stronger." Walton returns 2-time AJC Player of the Year Hayden Mulberry at #1 singles. That's on the boys' side. He hasn't come close to losing a match all season. He's committed to Notre Dame. Then Grace Keller, she's holding down the #2 singles. 9th grader Reagan Mulberry, that is Hayden's younger sister. She is playing #3 singles. So the Mulberries are 2 of Walton Stars. And here we go. Here's the stat. The Raiders dedicated their new tennis courts and dedicated Court 1 to Roberta Mannheim, who started this dynasty. Mannheim was the coach from 2004 to 2011 and won 8 state championships. During that span, the Raiders were 147-0, the longest winning streak in Georgia history in any sport. Mannheim was present to receive the honor and watch Walton beat Cherokee 4-1. That was when the new courts opened. So exciting stuff. Walton's tennis is cruising. Obviously the girls, they've had a better run than the boys, but still both programs have been phenomenal. In a similar sense, the Milton girls in lacrosse have been just as dominant. I think they've won all but 2. One of those losses was to Walton, but other than that, I think that was the first ever time Walton even beat them. They are a 15-time state champs. They have won I think the only year they didn't win was 2016, and then in 2020 they didn't hold one. We've talked to Coach Godby a little bit this season, but let's just look at what they've done so far. They're 10-0. They did have a narrow win against BT, 10-9. Every other game has been a blowout. But I think that also goes to show, I mean, BT 10-9, that's a team that Johns Creek beat, and they're playing Milton that close. Things are really looking interesting in that region. But this past weekend, Milton went to Florida. They beat Haggerty 15-5 and beat IMG Academy 14-6. So we look at these national rankings and we see, I think, 12 Georgia schools in the top 25, and that is a good sign when Milton's playing this national schedule and just absolutely dominating these out-of-state teams. They're going to continue it this week, heading into the spring break part of the schedule. That's when you can really go on the national circus. They're going to play Connolly School of the Holy Child. That is a Maryland powerhouse. That's going to be this Friday. They're going to play Stone Ridge School of the Sacred Heart. That's a Maryland school on Saturday, and that's a doubleheader. They're going to play Paul the Sixth. That's a Virginia powerhouse. That's going to be a 3 p.m. game. So can Milton continue this dominance, beat 3 more out-of-state teams this weekend, and then they will close it out with North Gwinnett, South Forsyth, Buford, and Forsyth Central. It's hard to bet against Milton in girls lacrosse, and look at that. The latest national rankings, Milton is number 1. They have ascended to the top ahead of St. Ignatius College Prep out of California. And these were last updated prior to this past weekend with the win over IMG Academy and the other school from Florida. So that is super impressive. You also have Creekview at number 5, lurking behind them. They are obviously not in the same classification. All right. And then the other news that came out last Friday, I was completely stunned when I was talking to Coach Gates, is Cass is going to be playing Rome in the Corky Kell. I mistakenly said they were going to be playing a rematch with Kennesaw Mountain, which was an incredible game last year. I was excited about that one, but I think when we talk about what our favorite Corky Kell matchups are on this year's schedule, I think that one has now moved up towards the top for me. I am really interested to see if Cass can keep pace with Rome. They last played in 2019 before Coach Gates got there. They've been on a steady rise. I first heard about what was going on at Cass right around the time Coach Gates got there. Rusty Manziel was up in that area a lot covering the surrounding North Georgia schools. He said Cass is going to be really good in a couple years, and they certainly have been on the rise. The big takeaway last year was that they felt that they lost a lot of games they should have won. A lot of coaches say that, but it was 100% true. They had a chance to win against a great Kennesaw Mountain team. It was their first ever time playing in the Corky Kell. It was the season opener, and really it just came down to who had the ball at the end. Kennesaw Mountain was able to pull away with a 1-point victory. They lost to Dalton, 31-28, a game they felt they could have won. The Calhoun game was really close, and Calhoun at the time was coming off a loss to Hiram, a team that ended up not even making the playoffs but was also outstanding. So they got a really focused effort from Calhoun, played them toe-to-toe. They beat Jefferson in the playoffs, a number 1 seed. They stunned them, and then the game against Mays, that was the 34-27 loss. A game that they were ahead in. Mays kind of beat them with some really athletic plays at the end. They had that advantage over them in terms of overall speed, but defensively Cass was great last year, and they have a ton of returning talent. And then Mays went on to the quarterfinals, and they fell 40-34 in overtime to Dutchtown, who was phenomenal last season. So I think Cass, they might not open the year in the rankings. They might not be a top 10 team at first. Obviously, if they come out and beat Rome week 1, that would ascend them to the top. 5A is very deep. But what a great test that's going to be, playing in the nightcap at Barron Stadium. Cass and Rome, that is a really intriguing matchup that I'm now excited we're going to get to see. I think that also is just going to sharpen the focus. That wasn't the original plan. They also had, forgot who they were supposed to scrimmage They had a scrimmage fall through that led to them having to pin down Milton to play. That's going to be a great test for them. I just think this is a big year for the Colonels, and if you just look at it's more than steady improvements. It's just continuous improvement. Since the 2020 season when Coach Gates got there, they are playing really well, and I think they're going to be a tough matchup for anyone, and they definitely are going to be building confidence from last year. You go on the road and beat Jefferson. I think that shows your toughness as a team. Jefferson is really physical. They were battle tested, and they just outplayed them and got the win. You beat Sammy Brown and company, you are doing things right. And in that game, Sammy Brown had 26 carries, 111 yards. You can't say that he wasn't out there. That was a big win for sure. That sounds like Sammy Brown had a big performance, but that's probably one of his lower outputs. His longest carry was 19 yards. You limit the explosive plays, you have a chance to compete with a team like Rome. So we will see. And then obviously Rome has a lot to prove this season also. Let's look at Reese Fountain for a second. So Rome last year was 12-2. Their only losses, let's see, they lost to Carrollton 23-6. It's not a bad loss right there. Obviously, you aren't going to win many games when you put up just 6 points. And then they lost to Hughes. Lost to Carrollton and Hughes last year, two of the best teams in the state. Other than that, they had a phenomenal season. They had a 42-19 win over Alatoona. The win over Creekside week 1 was big. They beat Pebblebrook in a back-and-forth game. Pebblebrook was a good team last year. They haven't necessarily made the deep runs, but Pebblebrook is racking up 6-7 wins every single season. They always have outstanding athletes. We know how good they are in basketball, too. They beat Alpharetta 35-14 down the stretch in the playoffs. Alpharetta was great last year, was really playing well. They beat Marist in the quarterfinals. So I think Rome is a team that people might be putting at the top of the polls in 5A to start next season. And there's a good reason why. You look at those 2 losses. Well, sorry, they're 6A. Why do I keep saying 5A? Yeah, they're 6A. So I don't have the full stats in front of me. Okay, here we go. Reese Fountain last season, really solid numbers. 218 of 292 passing, 3,028 yards, 75% completion percentage, 216 yards per game, 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He definitely is a pocket passer. He did not carry the ball much last year, just 185 total yards. Let's look at those interceptions, what games those came in. Yep, and so memory does serve correct. He had the 2 interceptions in the Creekside win. First game of the season, Creekside's defense, they're notorious for it. Sometimes you have the tip passes. Those can happen. Then he ended up having 1 interception in the Carrollton game. And then a couple in the Hughes loss. Other than that, he was extremely efficient passing the ball. against River Ridge, season finale to clinch the region. 15 of 19, 338 yards, 4 touchdowns. Against Alatoona, who after that game shut out 5 straight opponents. Reese Fountain had 401 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, with 24 of 31 completions. So I think Reese Fountain's a guy, he has seen it all. Talked about the games they did lose last season. Lost to Carrollton and lost to Hughes. Obviously, those teams aren't going anywhere. It looks like they will play Carrollton again in non-region play. That's going to be epic. Who knows? Maybe we'll try to televise that one. That'll probably be around Labor Day. And then in that 6A field, you're talking about Roswell, Hughes, Gainesville, a lot of talented teams that we will be interested in seeing this upcoming season. So yeah, that's a great matchup, Cass and Rome. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick break and thank our sponsors, Georgia Farm Bureau.
Our mission has always been to support Georgia farmers. That's why we created Georgia Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, providing financial protection that farmers needed. While this remains the same today, we've grown to protect all Georgians through home, auto, and life insurance. From the very beginning and into the future, we stand for every Georgia community.
We are our Farm Bureau.
All right, welcome back. So I'm looking for a story that had some information regarding the instant replay on the specifics of the protocols, because this was something I have been wondering. So let's look at it real quick. And so my question was, is it going to be a situation where the coach has a challenge flag? Is it a situation where the refs are calling up to someone in the booth? Who's ultimately making the decision to overturn? So let's check it out. The Georgia High School Association has established tentative video review protocols to be used for this year's football championship games at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Did I read that right? The state championships are going to be played at the Benz? All right. When did that news break? Dang, I missed that. Okay, so this is good news. All right, so the GHSA has established tentative video review protocols to be used for this year's football championship games at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So obviously they're going to be used at the Corky Kell at the Benz, and the GHSA is announcing that same protocol will be used in the championships in a tentative situation, meaning they will do it. It just hasn't been necessarily set in stone. So the replay rules shared with the AJC on Tuesday and almost certain to be approved at the GHSA's executive committee next month call for 3 review officials, 2 in a restricted area of the press box, and 1 on the sideline. So probably 5 years ago, the GHSA went from 6 officials in the playoffs to 7, and that is why there was a shortage last year, and they had to split up the first round to Friday and Saturday. So this makes it seem like once we get to the championships, the shortage won't be a problem, but they're going with 2 extra officials that are going to be in the press box. So that's something that won't be feasible for the first round, the second round, the third round. Bringing 2 extra officials, it really would only make sense that you'd be able to do that in the semis and championships, maybe the quarterfinals, but There's just not enough referees to do it in the first 2 rounds. But you could do it in specific games, I guess, but then you have schools fighting over referees. How's that going to work out? All right, so let's read that one more time. The replay rules shared with the AJC on Tuesday and almost certain to be approved at the GHSA's Executive Committee in April call for 3 review officials, 2 in a restricted area of the press box and 1 on the sideline. The head replay official may call for reviews at any time, while head coaches are limited to 1 challenge per half, signaled by throwing a red flag. The time is right, GHSA Executive Director Robin Hines said. While there hasn't been an I like his choice of words. The time is right. While there hasn't been an epidemic of controversial calls, there have been a couple over the past 6 years that would have benefited from review. True. We have the technology to do a good job. NFHS rules now allow it, and our goal is to get it right. Exactly. All right, the spark for adopting video replay came during the Class 3A championship game in December in a 21-17 victory over Cedar Grove. Sandy Creek scored the winning touchdown on a third down play that GPB Sports video indicated fell almost a yard short of the goal line. Within days, as video of the play was going viral, GHSA Board of Trustees members were discussing change. In January, they voted unanimously to bring the matter before the GHSA's Executive Committee at the annual spring meeting, April 17th. So that is a date to mark on our calendars. That seems to be when they will make it official. Hines expects overwhelming, if not unanimous, approval next month. And I don't know, besides arguing that there would be too many officials to do it in certain rounds, I don't think you could argue against it. That would make Georgia one of fewer than 20 states to adopt some form of video replay. The NFHS didn't allow it until around 2018. And that came after the controversial call at Mercedes-Benz where you could argue it all started. That was the Peach County game. Looked like the guy caught the ball and got into the end zone, and then they said it was an incomplete pass, I believe, and all the coaches were pointing up to the video board. They saw the replay, but there was nothing they can do. Now it's going to be, I guess, the complete opposite. We'll get to see the replay. That would make Georgia, okay, I already read that. In 2017, the GHSA endured a similar state championship firestorm when Peach County's potential go-ahead touchdown was ruled an incomplete pass on 4th down late in a 10-6 loss to Calhoun. The GHSA plans to limit video review to the football state championships for now. Other sports could follow, one step at a time, Hines said. The football protocols are the work of a committee comprising Kevin Giddens, the GHSA's football director, James Arnold, a 38-year-old Georgia football official, and the state training coordinator, along with David Reynolds, another longtime official and trainer. So yeah, it's interesting. How do they choose who is going to be the lead review guy? Is that their only role in the game? Is that the only role of these other 2 guys? And then we're doing it at Corky, and there obviously are a lot of games going on that first week, but not on Saturday. So it will not be an issue then. Giddens said the biggest difference between the GHSA's plan and the NCAA or NFL replay rules would be that on-field officials would play no role in reviewing or ruling on calls. Their only jobs would be to stop play when a challenge is made and to announce the final decision. So it's not about anyone else but the ones looking at the footage. This won't require additional training for on-field officials or any change in their mechanics. The 2 press box officials would make the review decisions and relay them to the field. They would have access to the Falcons' video replay equipment, but Hines said all costs hadn't been sorted out. Yeah, that was my question. I'm assuming it's just going to be any camera angle they're going to be able to use to make the determination. The GHSA would train review officials, though Giddens said he hoped to get experienced replay officials. They would be paid the same as the 7 game officials. This might actually up the amount of officials. It's not a bad job just sitting in the booth and getting to review calls. And so that will be $175 per official in the 2022 championships. And yeah, I also think one of the other things that's led to the shortage is talk about the average age of these officials. More of them end up retiring than young guys that are coming in. But if you don't have to necessarily do the physical part of the job and you can be one of the officials in the booth that has years of experience, I think that would be a good thing. And certainly you wouldn't have to battle the elements as much or risk injury and everything else that is involved. Replay officials would have access to video from network television, including GPB, which televises the state finals, and other video means on site, such as live streaming. All right, so that's interesting too, because of Corky Kell, that's obviously going to be on Peachtree TV, GPB. They've never done a game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and so when we do it at Corky Kell, it's almost like we're combining 2 studios. Rather than being out in the truck and producing the game from that, our producers go in and take advantage of the equipment on site at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, so GPB would likely do the same. The video review official and their crew shall review every play of the game. The protocol state, the video review of... Okay, this is interesting, because I thought the job was only for the refs on the field to stop the clock, but apparently the review officials have authority to call down. So the video review official and their crew shall review every play of the game. That's stated in the protocols. The video review official may stop a game at any time before the ball is next legally put in play whenever they believe that there is reasonable evidence to believe an error was made in the initial on-field ruling. Number 2, if the play is reviewable. And 3, the outcome of a review would have a direct competitive impact on the game. It's the same sort of thing we've seen in college and NFL. Once the ball is snapped on the next play, you can't review it anymore. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see. And these guys are obviously going to have to work quickly. Coach initiating a review would not be charged a timeout unless the challenge did not meet the criteria for a reviewable play. Yeah, so this is really well thought out. I mean, I thought it was just going to be, because it's tentative, I thought it was going to be a situation where it's like, hey, the coach has a problem with this, you guys get one challenge, let's check it out, let's go to the booth and make a decision. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with the on-the-field refs. And so, yeah, what happens if there's a controversial call and the offense rushes up to the line of scrimmage and gets a playoff? Oh, nothing we can do anymore. Did the coach get the challenge flag out in time? So nothing is going to slow down the pace of the game is essentially what I'm trying to say. All right, so a coach initiating a review would not be charged a timeout unless the challenge did not meet the criteria for a reviewable play. So you misfire on a challenge, you try to challenge a pass interference, you can't do that, you're losing a timeout. The protocols would prevent stadium video from showing the challenge play until a ruling is made and then only once at regular speed. I think once this gets to the state championships, you're going to see two things. Where the ball is spotted, it's going to be huge. It's not just, these aren't just going to be these goal line plays. Last season, we saw more teams go for it on fourth down than any others. Anytime it's going to be close on a yard mark, it's not just going to be a measurement. They're going to go to the reviews. So I think that's going to be really interesting. And obviously a good thing. You want to get it right. But I think we're also going to see it on plays in the boundaries. Did they get the foot in? I think there's a lot of opportunities to review plays. I mean, you're right on the yard mark for a first down. You can pretty much review it every time. All right, review officials would be expected to resolve challenges in 2 minutes. Good luck with that. So, yeah, they're going to try to make each one in less than 2 minutes and err on the side with sticking with the on-the-field call. That's the whole inconclusive evidence. The thing that really makes me mad, though, I'm just going to say it, is when you're watching these NFL or college games and they review a play and then they come out and don't explain it. They're just like, yeah, the ruling on the field stands, or it's reversed. And it's like, okay, why?
You should tell them to adopt the NBA. They have to explain the whole.
Yep, Najee's 100% right. In the NBA, they have to explain it. So yeah, provide evidence. And it's like a confidence thing. If you come out and say, oh, the ruling on the field stands, it was an incomplete pass, that language is different than saying, we looked at the video and his foot was on the line, therefore it's incomplete. It's like, just explain it. Instead, it's just like, oh, well, we looked at it and we couldn't tell. No, we need a declarative statement. That's the entire point. Or like some of these other ones where it wasn't established a catch. It's like, why? Just say, he had the ball wasn't secured, it was moving, it hit the ground. Because otherwise people are going to be like, no, it was a catch. What didn't make it a catch? You need to just explain it. I like the one where I saw, the worst one I ever saw was, I don't even like the Steelers, but Troy Polamalu, this is how long ago it was, he had an interception in a playoff game. He literally takes it back probably 5 yards. He gets tackled, rolls over twice, and then his knee knocks the ball out, and they said he never made a football move. And I was just like, he never made a football move. He ran 5 yards and hit the ground, and then he knocked it out himself after he was down, and they literally called it an incomplete pass. It was just like one of the most head-scratching reviews I've ever seen in my life. Like, I'm just like, what are you guys looking at? But I have confidence. We'll be good this time, hopefully. To reverse an on-field ruling, the video review official must be convinced beyond all doubt by indisputable video evidence through one or more video replays provided to the monitors. Here's another quote from Hines. You're always concerned about the time because we are on a schedule, noting that there are as many as 3 championship games played in a single day. We'll enter into reviews with the idea that the call on the field was right until proven otherwise. We're to get that done as quickly as possible. Keeping things going is important as well. 100%. You can give offenses a de facto timeout if you just take too long and if it's just like an unnecessary review. The GHSA plans to test the review system during the Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic's 4 games Saturday, August 17th at Mercedes-Benz. So there you go. That will be exciting. I'm glad I went through that. I have a better idea of how it's going to look. I'm sure they're during the broadcast, they will explain all of this. They'll talk about who the two officials are, who's the lead review official, and then moving forward, I think that'll be the first test run, and then we'll close the season out the same way. So I think that is certainly exciting. And as I said, the one thing I'm really interested is on situations where they're spotting the ball, forward progress. That will be huge. It's going to come down to a lot of these first down plays. That's huge. So we will see. But that's all I have. I will be back on Wednesday. We're going to be live tomorrow at noon, catching up on so much in the sports world, all the craziness. I heard Graham say that there was millions of brackets filled out and only 32 people had their final four right. That is unbelievable. And yeah, it just goes to show how important it is to make the tournament, because once you make the tournament, anything can happen. And I know there are so many teams right now that missed out on the tournament that are looking at how it's played out, and they are kicking themselves right now that they didn't at least give themselves a shot. So it's exciting for sure to see all this parity in the college landscape. Should be a really exciting Final Four coming up soon. But we'll be back tomorrow. I hope everyone has a good week. We'll see you then.